Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Prodigal Son, a great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I think it's so interesting that basically Malcolm's clue from last episode, letting him find a station wagon, basically inadvertently led him to another killer. And now the whole question then becomes like, okay, so is this a coincidence? It can't be that the junkyard, that the station wagon that's connected to his memory, stuff that he's just remembering now, he happens to find it in the same place that ends up being the hunting ground for another serial killer, because they end up finding, at the very least throughout the episode, they ended up finding at least 9 different bodies. All have been there over different points in time, some fresher than others. So whoever this dude is, he's been active for a very long time. And so obviously there's a complicated thing of like, well, this is personal for Malcolm because it's like, well, this is connected to his dad in some shape or form. He just doesn't know how, because everything seems like it might not be connected, but there's just too much coincidence going on. And Danny's taking this personal because it's the Bronx and everything. And this is her, as Malcolm said it, her hood, which she was like, oh, please don't say hood. And even JT looking at him like, yeah, dude, come on, don't do that. But I thought it was kind of interesting just hearing her kind of be like, oh, people think the Bronx is just this and that, but there's like 40 square miles or something like that. It's this section and this. She's like, okay, yeah, I'm taking it personal. Like I said, it's her place, it's her home. So knowing that there's a serial killer around and that has been active for a while, and it kind of gets to Gil too, because it's like, this guy's been active under my jurisdiction, and it's like he's got to be stopped. So there's that element to things. And obviously the problem with this case is it's hard for Malcolm to kind of wrap his head around the nature. He can't really get a good profile. I even love him being like, it's like, this isn't a science, which JT was like, well, isn't it? And then Gil's kind of giving him a look like, come on, drop it. But JT's like, come on. Didn't he tell us the first day that literally this was a science? Didn't he literally tell us that? I love that. And also, you gotta love Idrissa being the adorable human being that she is. And it's like, wait, is that a pizza spatula? But she said, like, it's called something, is it called a pizza spiel or something like that? It's French, which she's like, that's weird considering the fact this pizza is Italian. And Danny's like, yeah, that's what's weird. And then the fact is, obviously, there's the whole thing of like Malcolm kind of referencing who this killer is. Because the fact of the matter is, this killer doesn't get all personal with his victims. He can't actually do it face to face. So he does this. He leaves them to be crushed by these machines, which is just fucking brutal. Because he locks them into these vehicles while they're still alive, because they're pounding on the glass. And they end up getting crushed while they're alive. But the difference between this type of killer and the surgeon is the surgeon likes to be up close and personal. This guy doesn't. He wants to disassociate, kind of look at these people as objects. That way it makes it possible for him to kill them. But, and obviously, Malcolm is trying to bring it back. He's like, yeah, I've been trying to tell Gil all day that this has something to do with my dad. And I love Idrissa being like, yeah, you should probably listen to him. And Gil kind of gives her the look and she's like, or not, that's up to you. I just thought that was kind of neat. But obviously, this all ultimately ends up tying into, Ainsley's interview with Dr. Whitley, which her mom is like, oh my God, Jessica's like, you're giving him these softball questions. She's like, that's just to let the network think I'm going to ask those questions. I got my own. And it's like, for her, it's like, that makes it even worse, because it makes you think that you're more clever than the surgeon himself. And it's going to, at the end of the day, it's going to make you, and she's like, what? Look like what? And then Jessica says his accomplice, because he is so, you think, oh, you're on top of everything. Because I think, obviously she's speaking from personal experience, because that's all she's ever had to deal with for these past 20 some years. Is the fact is that everyone looks at her as like, how could you not know? So it's always basically making it seem like the fact of the matter is, if you play into his game, you're going to get caught up in it and become his accomplice, because basically referencing the fact is what ends up going down in the episode is that he tries to give everything a positive spin, because Ainsley goes guns blazing, going like, yo, here's some questions about the people that you killed, this and that. But he tries to shift the narrative to be like, yeah, but what about the lives I've saved? I'm like, that's a spin. It's like, people, I'm not perfect. It's like, yes, it's coming from a man who's killed like 23 people. Like, yeah, like but the way he's trying to spin it. And that's even something, Jessica was wondering about, is the fact of the matter, he's going to be charismatic. That's one of the many things that makes him as deadly as he is. So, and even Ainsley kind of realizing like, oh, he's taking complete control of this interview. And now it turns into this circumstance of Malcolm's there trying to get information about this serial killer because he's piecing it all together. It's like the fact of the matter is I'm having these memories. Like there's no way this is a coincidence. So it's like, but then, there's the knife that, Idrissa and the others had found. And it's like it triggers some kind of memory because Malcolm remembers running with it. But you can see in the memory he was covered in a little bit of blood. So there's all of that. And then, but as he typically does, he doesn't give Malcolm the answers he wants or needs. He tries to spin it like, oh, the fact of the matter is, aren't you taken away from your sister's time? And the fact of the matter is, he's even enjoying this too, because it's like, oh, look at both my kids here. It's a family reunion. So it's this really complicated. Well, Martin being a complicated person that he is, never giving you the answers you need. And they, they're trying, and I think it's interesting too, because what adds a complicated nature to this too is it's a combination of Ainsley's desire to know her dad while also trying to get a scoop of her job. So it's plus just, there's a mixture of all that, because even like, it's like, no, I know a way how we can attack this situation from a different point. And he's like, dude, you were literally jumping up and down. It's like, should I play the Rocky theme song right now? And she's like, no, I got this, but, basically, she talks about the fact is, let's talk about your victim, Malcolm. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she starts going in about like, well, look what you've done to your son. You basically destroyed your son. You ruined him. The fact of the matter is he's not had any semblance of a normal life. And the only form of a normal life he's had is like the 10 years that he hasn't seen you. It's the happiest he's been. So the fact of the matter is you haven't been a good father, which that makes him snap because he's like, take it back. I'm a good father. And because that's the thing, we rarely get to see that side of him, but this is like the second time in the show so far we've seen him lose his cool like that. The first time was when Malcolm started ignoring him. He was, oh, calm, cool, and collected, but eventually he snapped him. Was like, call me back, because he desires their attention. To be fair, he desires attention, but more so than anyone, he wants his family's attention because it's like, oh, I love you. You're my spawn. You're my kids. He's so narcissistic. It's like, your guys carry on a part of me. You are me. You're my legacy. So kind of bring it back. Because even earlier he had made reference to like, oh, legacies and all that. And the fact is that he had like a surgery named after him. It's like, oh, I mean, after this debacle, they had to change the name. But even in some circles, doctors still refer to it as the Whitley. Once again, kind of proving that narcissism and his need to feel, important and special. Because, once again, how all the lives I've saved and yada, yada, yada. And so it was just interesting. And I think, Ainsley kind of felt good about like how mom was so worried about him getting the best of me. But look, I got the best of him. And even him being like, oh, look at you. He was actually kind of impressed with what she was able to do and kind of pushed him in that direction. But then the facility goes on. Well, because I didn't even talk about it earlier because he tried to spin it too to be like, oh, like, I'm mentally unwell. The fact of the matter is the stigma behind almost like trying to make it a mental health thing. It's like you're a serial killer, which yes, there's some form of mental health to that, but he wants to make it almost seem like that's all there is to it. It's like, that's why I'm here at this psychiatric facility. The fact of the matter is I'm trying to get better. Like I'm trying to rehabilitate and stuff like that. I mean, the only reason why he's most likely there is because he was able to probably convince people that something was wrong with him mentally rather than him being the cold and calculated human being that he is. But circling back to what I was about to bring up, there's the whole facility getting shut down because Tevin, because he's so obsessed with Ainsley. And that right there was kind of the whole point. I mean, they kind of set it up last episode of like how obsessed with Ainsley he was, of like, oh my God, like I need to get my story out there and all that. So he's basically got part of the place shut down so no one could get inside. And he's stuck inside with Davis, the dude who's looking after Whitley, Martin, Malcolm, and Ainsley, as well as Ainsley's cameraman / boyfriend. So there's that whole situation. And obviously Ainsley has him going to get like filler footage to be like, oh, I can film some stuff so I can put some creepy music over or something like that. And even Malcolm's like, really? That's the time to be doing this? Like under these circumstances? She's like, I still got a show to do. So there's that. But then sadly, he ends up, Tevin ends up stabbing Jen, and it's in a position where it's like, of course, the only person who could help under these circumstances is Martin. I figured he wasn't going to go all serial killer or hurt anyone there, but I knew it was going to be him trying to spin this. It's like, oh, because if I save not only someone in front of my daughter's boyfriend in front of her, oh, I'm going to get some good brownie points. So it turns into a thing of like, okay, so when the time comes, Malcolm wanted to be the one to like, no, I'll do it. You just lead me through it. But Malcolm couldn't do it. I bet you Martin was kind of counting on that. You did see the look on his face like, oh, he was actually kind of shocked that Malcolm volunteered. But Malcolm is that resilient to like, letting you get unshackled for any amount of time and putting a scalpel in your head. Hell no. But he ends up having to because Malcolm's having visions of the past, and it's like it was almost like his father guiding his hand with the knife. So it kind of leads into something I brought up last episode where it seems like the question is, did Malcolm actually kill somebody? Or did his dad convince him like, oh, it's an animal or something, but then it turns out, oh my, holy crap, it was a body. The body that was in the suitcase that Malcolm remembered because that was around it depends on this particular situation. Was this before or after he found that body in his suitcase? Because it might have been the same person that he probably brought. Well, because that person, you assume in the suitcase was dead. But the thing is, maybe the reason why it had affected it on Malcolm because he remembered at the time. It was like, oh my God, that's the person from the bag. Maybe not. Maybe these are two. Well, because there's at least one victim that's not accounted for when it comes to this whole situation. Also begs the question, did this other serial killer, the one that crushes the bodies at the junkyard, could it have been the fact is, could he have disposed of some, if not one or two, victims of, the surgeons? It makes you wonder about that. But nevertheless, kind of getting back to what I was saying, but that trauma or whatever it is that his subconscious is buried that he's trying to get access to, he can't perform the surgery. So, hey, let's unshackle Martin and let him do it. And then there's the whole thing of Ainsley filming it too, which even Malcolm was once again like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm doing my job. And she's asking him questions and stuff like that. It's like, is that, because sadly you're literally doing what your mom said would happen, that he'd kind of charm you and you'd almost like sympathize and look at, because I think on some level there is some small part of her that is trying to look for any good in her dad that came up before. So when she sees even a glimpse of, oh, there's some human side of him that maybe it's like, hey, maybe he was a terrible person before, but hey, he's redeeming himself. There is some good part of him. There's some part of my dad in that surgeon, in that serial killer, that I think because of that. But I'm like, are we already completely forgetting everything he did earlier in the episode, trying to manipulate you, twist the narrative? But it's a little different when he's trying to twist the narrative in that regard, because actions speak louder than words. But like I said, I think Ainsley was just looking for an excuse for, oh no, he's good. There's good in him. I can see it. And the fact is, it comes down to the situation of, is she going to run the story the way she has or not? Like, her perception of her dad is starting to get skewed. Malcolm and Jessica haven't changed their opinion of the surgeon in any shape or form, but Ainsley is in that in-between lane where she's starting to kind of tick over into, because for her, it's like, oh, I wanted to see a different side of him. She made that clear beforehand, despite everything, her mom being like, no, he's an evil person. But she's like, that's what you've told me all these years. I need to know for myself. But and that potentially can ultimately end up being her own undoing in a sense, in this regard. But obviously, you have Malcolm dealing with Tevin, because it turned, obviously we looked into it a little bit about like, not only did he kill his parents, which we found out like last episode, now we found out on top of all of that he kind of butchered them. And he actually was the one that actually turned himself in, because there's a part of him that wants the attention. And obviously Malcolm used that to his advantage. Like, oh yeah, put the camera up and everything. It's like, oh, do you want to say something? But look right at the camera, and then zaps him, and was able to kind of let the SWAT and come through and kind of take care of him. But obviously, Martin's continuing to work on Jim, and now it's like, oh, he's all good, he's breathing again, and it's like, oh wow, you saved him and everything. And like, you can see the delight in Ainsley's eyes, and even when their mom meets up with them later on, and she's like, Mom, Dad saved him, even calling him Dad instead of Dr. Whitley. And she's like, of course he did. So making it seem like, Jessica's like, it's already too late. You're already falling into your dad's trap. And now it turns into the whole situation of Malcolm figuring out, because obviously Dr. Whitley doesn't do anything by accident, because even when the whole situation was happening, even camera caught it. He's just looking down, unemotional, unattached. It's almost like either he knew it was going down or almost like, everything's kind of going according to plan. It just seemed like he was trying his best to keep a stone face. I don't know. But then there's the whole thing of like, Malcolm's like, the fact is he dropped him information and it's like, but there's no way he did that on accident. It had to be on purpose. The fact is that he was giving Malcolm a clue that he met, because it's interesting too, because he talked about the fact is that, people in a condition like mine, quote unquote serial killers, because obviously he's not trying to say that, obviously for the recording or whatever, but the fact of the matter is, like-minded people, like, we seek each other out. It was kind of like a mentor, which all that kind of pieces together, like, okay, so this has to be someone he met at the hospital, and probably most likely wasn't one that he worked at, but maybe he, worked with at sometimes. The fact is, it couldn't have been another doctor. It had to be someone lower than him because he's too narcissistic. It's like, I have to be the one, the alpha and in control. Whoever this was someone much like Tevin, someone I can manipulate, which that was what kind of got Malcolm realizing this was all part of his manipulation. Because he got introduced to Tevin last episode and saw like, oh, what buttons needed to be pushed. Like, oh my God, he wants Ainsley to tell his story. So all I have to do is manipulate him into believing like, oh, my daughter is the key to getting his story told. So do what I say and you will get your story told, plastered out there always, so, and on top of that, he also has the bonus, the added benefit of, Ainsley being in what position that she's in is going to spread that story like, oh, how great her dad is. But obviously Tevin ends up revealing the fact is that, Whitley was behind all this. Is it because he didn't get what he wanted, or was this further part of Whitley's plan? Because he's being put in isolation. So I'm like, okay, that's got to be. I was almost thinking like while being moved, he put himself in a position where he can escape. I thought that's what the grand plan was. But it's like, no, if he's on the run, he's not going to have the opportunity to be with his kids. I mean, that might be the end game to all of this. But, we'll see how things kind of play out. But he's in solitude now. And it's like, now Malcolm can't get the answers he wants, and now Malcolm's going to be more and more desperate, especially as he's remembering more like what the hell this is all about. Then there's the interesting thing at the end where we have Malcolm and his mom are talking, and they go down, they hear a phone ringing, and it's coming from Martin's office that's boarded up now. They burst through, and it's the serial killer that we haven't even tackled at all this episode, because this episode was dealing with everything in that place. So it's like we haven't really tackled that. So that's something we're going, well, because obviously it shows like at the very least there's at least one serial killer that's under, but Martin's tutorship. And like I kind of figured, like it seemed like he might have been trying to push his son to it. The thing is it might be that like Malcolm is capable of it. Like I said, there's a whole thing of him running away. Either like he found out last second what he did, maybe he started there but he didn't finish it, and Martin was like, oh, it's okay, son, I got this. Oh, this wounded animal, you need to put it down, like kind of referring to maybe his particular kill at that moment as someone that was wounded. It's like, oh, you're going to let them bleed out like that? So maybe Martin finished the job and then, Malcolm ran away. Like I said, we'll have to fill in those blanks. But it is the thing, we end up finding out that serial killer they're looking for this episode was there back then. So that camping trip was maybe not just, maybe it was like, oh, watch the master at work, but also watch the master as I bring my son under my tutelage as well to try and make him like me. Because I think that's what he sees, maybe the potential to be like him more so in Malcolm than Ainsley, but we'll see. Maybe he wants two different things from his children. He wants Malcolm to be more like him, and he wants Ainsley to love him and look up to him and cherish him, narcissistic nature. But some very interesting developments. I'm really curious to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.